Beginning, the human and the healer. The battlefield still smoked when the medship descended. It was called the Loom Ark, a floating sanctuary that drifted between warfronts collecting the broken and dying. The scent of ionized dust and blood hung thick in the air as its ramp extended onto cracked alien soil. And through that haze walked Kael, helmet shattered, armor scorched, the symbol of the Terran vanguard smeared with soot. He was human, or what was left of one. The others didn't see that anymore. When the alien medics saw him approach, their luminous eyes flared with fear. Their species, the Renari, had fought the Terrans for decades. And yet Kael's presence on that battlefield was not of an enemy now, but of a survivor too weary to raise a weapon again. One Renari healer, Elyra, stepped forward. Her skin shimmered faintly under the ship's sterile light, veins glowing with soft blue bioluminescence, a living contrast to Kael's ash-stained face. "Drop your weapon," she said, voice trembling but steady. Kael obeyed. The plasma rifle hit the dirt with a metallic thud. "Are there more of your kind?" she asked, scanning the field with a trembling hand. He shook his head. "No. There were. Not anymore." Her eyes narrowed. "You did this." Kael looked around, the fallen bodies of both Terrans and Renari, twisted metal, the craters where orbital strikes had erased entire platoons. "I survived this," he said quietly. "That's all." She didn't believe him. No one ever did. Still, she led him aboard the medship, binding his wounds in silence. Every Renari who passed glared or whispered, their translucent skin pulsing in warning hues, a display of species-wide contempt. Kael didn't react. He'd seen worse on both sides of the stars. Middle, the monster and the memory. Days passed aboard the Loom Ark. Kael remained in quarantine under observation or surveillance, depending on who you asked. Elyra was the only one willing to speak to him. He learned that she'd lost her sister during the siege of Carthen Prime, a battle he had fought in, years ago. When she found out he'd been there, her voice hardened. Yet something in her eyes flickered between fury and curiosity. "You fought there," she said one night, her hands glowing softly as she monitored his vitals. "I did," he replied. "And I regret every second of it." "Regret doesn't unmake the dead," she said bitterly. Kael's voice was quiet. "No. But maybe saving someone can." For the first time, she hesitated. The Ark's scanners had found something wrong within him, a strange pulse behind his ribcage, fused circuitry entwined with his heart. The medtechs feared it. They said the Terrans had experimented on their soldiers, fusing them with Ether Core's ancient alien tech that amplified strength and reflexes but consumed their emotions over time. To the Renari, these hybrids weren't human anymore. They were called Hollowborn. When Elyra scanned the data, she saw it, the core glowing faintly inside Kael's chest, pulsing like a trapped star. "You're one of them," she whispered. "A Hollowborn." He looked away. "I didn't ask to be." She took a step back, her luminescent eyes dimming in shock. "You're a monster." The word struck harder than plasma fire. Kael said nothing. He only turned his gaze to the viewport, the stars stretching endlessly, reflecting in the quiet moisture gathering in his eyes. After a long silence, he said, "Monsters don't cry, Elyra." But she didn't look long enough to see the tear fall. The turning point, the prison in his chest. A week later, alarms echoed through the Ark. Unidentified ships had entered the system, Terran Vanguard destroyers, hunting for escaped Hollowborn. The medship's crew panicked. Renari were pacifists, not soldiers. Kael stood at the window, watching the destroyers approach. He recognized the markings. He'd served under that fleet once. They weren't here to rescue him, they were here to erase the evidence of what they'd made. "Elyra," he said calmly, "you need to get everyone to the escape pods." She grabbed his arm. "What are you going to do?" "Finish what they started." Her voice broke. You'll die. He smiled faintly. Maybe that's what they made me for. Kael walked down the corridor, armor plates locking into place piece by piece. The arc systems shuddered as the destroyers began to charge their main cannons. He could feel the ether core inside him hum, responding to the proximity of its creators like a caged animal recognizing its masters. When he reached the hangar, Elyra followed, refusing to leave. You can't fight them alone, she cried. I'm not fighting, he said, stepping onto the docking platform. I'm detonating. She froze. What? He looked at her, really looked. The core isn't just power. It's containment. They put the essence of an ancient weapon in me, something that could shatter fleets. I've been its warden ever since. Her voice trembled. You're not a monster. You're. He cut her off gently. A prison. Climax, the final battle. The first blast from the Terran destroyers struck the loom arc. The hull screamed, alarms wailing as energy rippled through the ship. Kael leapt from the hangar bay, no shuttle, no armor boosters, just raw ether propulsion flaring from his hands. The core inside him blazed to life, veins glowing like molten silver beneath his skin. He crashed into the lead destroyer, punching through its shielding like paper. Soldiers opened fire, plasma bolts, railgun bursts, but every shot was absorbed by the swirling field around him. He moved like a storm, like gravity had surrendered. Inside the bridge, he found the admiral who'd once commanded him, Admiral Wren, eyes cold behind his visor. So the experiment survived, Wren sneered. How poetic. The monster defends his captors. Kael said nothing. He placed a hand on the ship's core reactor and let the ether within him flow. You called us monsters, Kael said quietly. You were right. The ship erupted in white fire. The loom arc watched from afar as the destroyer fleet fractured into fragments of light. The explosion was not like a normal blast, it unfolded slowly, radiating colorless energy that shimmered like tears suspended in space. When the shockwave cleared, nothing remained of Kael but static on the arc sensors. Elyra stood at the viewport, hands pressed to the glass. The others whispered prayers or shock, but she only stared into the stars, searching for a sign. Then, faintly, her med-scanner beeped. A heartbeat. Weak, distant, but human. Ending the monster's choice. 3 days later, they found him drifting among debris, unconscious, barely alive, armor fused to his skin. The ether core was gone. The prison inside him had finally emptied. When Kael woke, Elyra was there. You shouldn't have come back, he whispered. She smiled through her tears. You walked away once before. I didn't see your tears then. I'm not making that mistake again. He tried to speak, but his throat caught. For the first time, he looked at her not as his healer, not as a Renari, but as someone who'd seen him beyond the metal and the monster. I'm sorry, she said softly, for calling you that. Kael shook his head weakly. You weren't wrong. She touched his hand, her bioluminescent skin glowing faintly over his rough, burned fingers. Maybe not then. But you're human now. More than any of us. He laughed quietly, tears forming again. Humans are good at breaking things. Then fix this, she said. Start with yourself.